Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. This is Narayan Rao Kovur. In this video, I am going to explain change in consumer surplus on account of fall in price. Change in consumer surplus on account of fall in price. Consumer surplus is equal to what a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. Consumer surplus is equal to willing price minus actual price. Consumer surplus is equal to marginal utility minus price. Here, price and consumer surplus are inversely related. This is the price, this is the consumer surplus. Price rises, consumer surplus falls. Price falls, consumer surplus rises. There is a inverse relationship between price and consumer surplus. Next, it can be explained with the help of diagram. Draw L shape, mark YOX, price is measured on y-axis, quantity is measured on x-axis. DD demand curve, also called MU curve. OP price, OP price, OP original price, OQ original quantity. Then consumer surplus is a triangle A. Triangle A. Now price falls from OP to OP1. Price falls from OP to OP1. Quantity increase from OQ to OQ1. So consumer surplus also increases to APE to AP1F. So a fall in price from OP to OP1 increases consumer surplus from APE to AP1F. APE to AP1F. So new increased consumer surplus for existing buyers is PP1GE rectangle B. This is the new increased consumer surplus for existing buyers PP1GE, that is called rectangle B. New increased consumer surplus for new buyers is EGF triangle C. So these are the consequences when there is a fall in price. Fall in price, consumer surplus increases. Right. Practical applications of consumer surplus. What is the practical applications of consumer surplus? Consumer surplus and price discrimination. So it encourages repeated purchases by the consumers. Consumer surplus encourages the consumers to repeat purchases. So consumer surplus encourages repeat purchases by the consumers. Then firms charge lower prices to customers with lower consumer surplus. If the consumer surplus is lower, firms charge lower price. If the consumer surplus is high, firms charge higher price to customers. If we observe that, this is the practical application. Consumer surplus encourages the consumers or customers repeat purchases. Second one is, if there is a lower consumer surplus, firms charge lower prices to customers and vice versa. If there is a higher consumer surplus, firms charge higher price to customers. Next, importance of consumer surplus to the government. How this consumer surplus is useful to the Ministry of Finance and government. Government or Ministry of Finance will impose taxes or increase taxes on goods which consumer enjoys high consumer surplus. So consumer enjoys high consumer surplus, particularly the government or Ministry of Finance will impose taxes or increase taxes on goods. Next, hence loss of welfare will be minimum. Loss of welfare will be minimum. For example, recently government raised the taxes on telecommunication services, OTT platform, online gaming. So example, recent rise in taxes on telecommunication services, OTT platform and online gaming. That is the importance of the consumer surplus. If the consumer surplus is more, the government impose taxes on that goods. Our Ministry of Finance also impose taxes on that goods. Right. This is the importance of consumer surplus to the government as well as Ministry of Finance. Limitations. But there are some limitations in the case of consumer surplus. What is consumer surplus? What a consumer is ready to pay minus what he actually pays. This is the consumer surplus. Here there are some limitations. What are the limitations now? Modern economists argue that this concept is hypothetical and illusionary. Several modern economists argued that the concept of consumer surplus is hypothetical in nature and illusionary in nature. Point number 1. Consumer surplus cannot be measured precisely in real life. It cannot be measured. Consumer surplus cannot be measured precisely in real life. That means it is difficult to measure marginal utility of different units of a commodity. Marginal utility of a different units of a commodity is very difficult to measure. Consumer surplus. So it is difficult to measure marginal utility of a different units of a commodity. Different units of a commodityకి మార్జినల్ యూటిలిటీని క్యాలిక్యులేట్ చేయటం కష్టం. మార్జినల్ యూటిలిటీని క్యాలిక్యులేట్ చేయటమే కష్టమైనప్పుడు కన్జ్యూమర్ సర్ప్లస్ కూడా కష్టమే. నెక్స్ట్ సెకండ్ వన్, కన్జ్యూమర్ సర్ప్లస్ కెనాట్ బి మెజర్డ్ ఇన్ టర్మ్స్ ఆఫ్ మనీ. కెనాట్ బి మెజర్డ్ ఇన్ టర్మ్స్ ఆఫ్ మనీ. ఇట్ ఈజ్ ఏ psychological feeling only, as mu of money changes. Marginal utility of money changes. Marginal utility of money not constant. Marginal utility of money changes. That is why consumer surplus cannot be measured in terms of money. It is a psychological phenomena. It is a subjective concept. Third one is necessaries. So marginal utility of earlier units of necessaries are infinitely large. Very, very important. In the case of necessaries, marginal utility of earlier units of necessaries are infinitely large. That means consumer surplus is always infinite. For example, desert లో ఒక పర్సన్ ఉన్నాడని అనుకున్నాం. డ్రింకింగ్ వాటర్ చాలా ప్రాబ్లంగా ఉంది అని అనుకున్నాం. డ్రింకింగ్ వాటర్ కానీ లేకపోతే అతను చనిపోతాడు. ఇప్పుడు మనం ఒక గ్లాస్ వాటర్ కానీ అతనికి అందిస్తే అతని లైఫ్ సెట్ అయిపోతుంది, జీవిస్తాడు. అదే ఒక గ్లాస్ వాటర్ కానీ ఇవ్వలేకపోతే చనిపోతాడు. తర్వాత నువ్వు ఎన్ని గ్లాసులు ఇచ్చినా కూడా వాటి వల్ల ఉపయోగం తక్కువగానే ఉంటుంది. సో హియర్ marginal utility of earlier units of necessaries are infinitely large. That means consumer surplus is always infinite. Fourth one, availability of substitutes, coffee and tea, apple and orange, substitutes. So consumer surplus from a good is affected by absence or presence of substitutes. Substitutes are available, substitutes are not available. Definitely consumer surplus is affected in the case of substitutes. Last one, prestigious goods, diamonds, gold, jewelry, costly furniture, etc., costly car. Prestigious goods. There is no any simple rule to derive the utility for prestigious good. There is no any specific rule to obtain utility from the consumption of a prestigious good. So, prestigious good. These are the limitations of theory of consumer surplus. So, thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and comment.